Hi, everyone. Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika. Look at me. I am in a different space today. Hello, new podcasting space that still needs to get set up. And most people know me as the winner of Survivor 41, and I think many would agree that I was an underestimated winner. And now through this podcast, I love interviewing guests who have life experience that we might have overlooked or underestimated, and I love to get to know who they are beyond just the bit that we've seen on screen. I usually start each episode with something I was happy to see this week, and I have the amazing pleasure of saying that what I'm happy to see today is season 2 of Happy to See Me. I feel so fresh and I'm excited for what's to come. So here's what you can expect on season 2. For one, I am now part of the Sonar Network, podcast network, let's go. So that means I will have the network support in terms of evolving and growing the show. Plus, I get support in terms of booking advertisements. And if you are a media or marketing pro, you know getting monetized is amazing. So thank you to everybody who has supported the podcast and listened to season 1 of Happy to See Me to help me glow up and reach this next step. Also, when it comes to season 2, I feel like I went on such a journey with season 1 and had so much fun talking to so many different guests and really figuring out what this show is about. And with season 2, I am ready to bring in a mix of guests, some folks that you recognize from reality TV, and we can talk about the experience of being on TV. We can talk about their life experience that led them to be on TV and what it's like now that they're not on screen or what it's like behind the screen. Plus, I have some amazing people who might not have been on reality TV, but they do have life stories that I find so inspirational. They have unique views on different life experiences that I think can be really eye-opening and helpful to everybody. And I look forward to sharing these people and these stories with you. Plus, I'm going to be talking to different experts. So different experts on different life experiences, different experts on what we see on TV to add a bit more color and help us to understand why we see ourselves and why we see each other the way that we do. So please get ready for a special mix of guests over the next few months. I hope you'll enjoy them. I know I really do. I'm also adding every now and then, we're going to mix it into the schedule, a new episode format. It's going to be the Happy to See Me Happy Hour, which is going to be a bit more of a casual conversation. Yes, I love having the inspirational talks where we learn more about people's experiences. We get to open up and be vulnerable. I also have people I want to talk to, and I just want to have a blast. So you will start to see some special episodes called the Happy to See Me Happy Hour, where I'll be talking to my friends or friends of the podcast, usually familiar faces, people you will know, and it'll be more of a casual conversation. And since it's a happy hour, there might be a drink. So you'll get to know another side of me there. And I already have my first happy hour guest in mind. You can guess who they are. They are a close friend of the pod. They are a dear, dear, dear friend to me. And there's so much that we want to share with you. So stay tuned for the first happy hour episode in a few weeks. But I am so excited for the second season of this podcast. And I cannot thank you enough for listening in on season 1. And now let's start off season 2 of Happy to See Me. Most folks know me as a Survivor winner, so it's only fitting that I bring in a fellow Survivor winner for season 2 of Happy to See Me. And this person is such an inspiration to me. It was somebody I saw on TV who, just like me, had the childhood dream of winning Survivor. They watched Survivor as a kid and said, I'm going to be on that show. I'm going to win. And then they pulled it off. I will be interviewing Kristie Bennett, the winner of Australian Survivor 2016. So we talk about how she felt before, during, and after the show and how she felt about her Survivor experience, plus that iconic final episode of her season when she wins the final immunity challenge and has one of the most amazing final tribal council performances in Survivor history. She is a marketer. She's also an advocate for mental health, and she's focused on making people's dreams come true as a reality TV casting consultant. And as you listen to this conversation, you will see we weirdly live dual lives and have so much in common. I love this conversation with Kristie, and I hope you will too. So let's get into it. This is Kristie Bennett. I hope you enjoy it. When I was filming Survivor 41, I was one of those people who watched all of the international seasons. And there's downtime on the show. So many people on my cast had watched the American seasons, but had never watched the Australian seasons. So I was raving about you. I was like, season finale of Australian Survivor 2016, get ready to cry for 76 minutes straight. I had never seen TV like this, and I'd never felt so inspired by somebody. So just so you know, you made it onto the island in Fiji during my season.
That legitimately gives me chills because American Survivor is everything for me. Like, that's where my dreams started. Like, I was an 8-year-old kid watching Richard Hatch in the year 2000, and I told my dad one day I'm going to get on Survivor and win. And I never had that chance for the US. And to hear that I somewhat am like a little bit of part of it out on that island is just makes my heart melt.
Okay, that's part of why I was just crying the entire time you were doing your immunity challenge and you're at the final tribal council. Because similar story, I'm a little bit older. So I was 11 years old when I watched Survivor, and I thought, I'm going to be on that show one day. I'm going to win. Somehow in my 11-year-old brain, I decided that's going to happen. And then as a Canadian, I didn't have the chance to be on the show forever. So I thought this dream is never happening. And then the opportunity comes. And I took it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did what Kristie Bennett did in my own way.
Oh my gosh, that is so wild, because I didn't really realize where the limitations were for the US. Like, I wasn't sure if Canadians could enter or Puerto Ricans, or I didn't really understand the dynamic there until you came out. And then you smashed it and won it. And then Canada has had a total run. I've even got my little Canada jumper on today.
You know what? I heard an interview you did a while ago, and you said that if you didn't get on Survivor in 2016, you would have moved to Canada.
Yes.
So why were you going to come to Canada?
So I had just been to Canada. Oh, sorry. Let me rewind. I was applying for Survivor, and I was working my advertising agency job, and I was just not enjoying it. I was doing account management, and I was definitely wanting to be a strategist, which is also where Survivor comes in. But I wanted to be a strategist, so it just wasn't working out for me. And so I had applied for Survivor, and I thought, you know what? If I don't get on Survivor, I'm just going to move to Canada. And at the time, I had been on holidays in Canada, going on this ski trip. And this is the moment I actually found out. So I quit my job, not knowing whether or not I was going to be on the show or not. And then I'm in Canada. For some reason, my parents had to go home. It's just me and my brother. And I'm waiting at the bus stop. And I get this email saying, hey, Kristie, we've been trying to get in contact with you for the past 2 weeks. We want to audition you for Survivor. And I'm like,
oh my God.
Shit, what? And so I'm like, I'm going to get on Survivor. Like, this is it. Like, once I'm in front of them, I know that they're not going to be able to not choose me. And on the way home, I actually missed my flight, and I was in one of the last casting auditions. So I almost didn't make it to casting as well. But essentially, I just had such a great time in Canada that was my next step. And although I haven't lived in Canada, I have come and visited a few times since.
Okay, I think we kind of have almost like a reverse life, because there was a time in my life where I would go to Australia for business. I worked with an Australian team. At one point, I was in consideration for moving to Australia, but then I found out that Canadians could apply for Survivor. I'm like, let me stay here and figure this out. And I was going through the casting process, and I was thinking, okay, either I'm going to get on Survivor, or I'm quitting this job and I'm going to go and travel around the world. And then I got on Survivor, but then it was the pandemic. So then it was the opposite of what I thought it would be. But yeah, I think that there's something to having it in your head that you just know that this is going to work out for you some way or the other. I always tell people when they want to apply for Survivor, if you are even on the fence at all, you're probably not going to get on, because you need to be somebody who 100% believes you are going to be on and you have what it takes to win. Were you always like that? Starting from when you were the 8-year-old girl, did you always think, yes, 100% I'm doing this?
Oh, I was completely delusional. Yes. I never once in my entire life didn't think I was going to get on, let alone not win. Like, I was like pretty cocky in a way. Like, I was cocky, not as an arrogant, like I think I'm better than everyone else applying and that I'm the perfect candidate. But I was like, there is no vision in my life where I do not get on and I do not win. Like, that just doesn't happen. And I was so confident. In fact, in my interview, my one-on-one interview, they're like, so what happens if you don't get on? And I'm like, I don't think you understand. I am going to win. And they had to ask me like 4 times. And I'm like, bloody hell, are you guys stupid? Like, I'm getting on, you're picking me, and I'm winning. So there is nothing else. And then in the end, they caved. Like, production caved on me going, okay, so you get on, what do you do next? And that's when I was like, oh, well, I think I'm going to move to Canada. Like, that's the next thing.
I mean, you're still welcome.
Yeah, I can still come. I can still do it. It's still in the pipeline somewhere in my dreams. But like you said, when I talk to anyone with casting, because I do casting mentoring. So anyone who wants to get on reality TV, I assist them because my background is in advertising marketing. I know what you need to put forward, what you need to sell, mixed with also having that experience of doing it myself. And all the time, I'm like, I don't care if you think you'll have no shot. You need to delusionally convince yourself that you are the ultimate choice and that you are going to win. Because if you don't go in with that conviction, then production isn't going to have that sense of certainty in you if you don't have it in yourself.
I always say this to people. I say that in order to be on one of these shows, you have to have a level of delusion, because something in your brain needs to say, yes, I know I'm getting on the show and there's going to be 17 or 23 other people and it's their dream to win Survivor, but I'm the one making my dream come true. Of course, there's going to be people who have a healthy level of delusion, which I believe that's where we're at, and then people who have unhealthy levels of delusion, and that's where good reality TV comes. But you need to have that belief. So when you were this kid and you decided, okay, I'm going to win the show, what did you start to do to start kind of building that delusion, quote unquote, or that confidence and that knowing that you had what it took to win?
It's so interesting. I've always been a really competitive person and I've always wanted to do my best in every single sport there is. And the moment happened when Richard Hatch let his hand off that idol in that final immunity challenge. And it was just everything that nobody expected. You see it in Jeff's face, like, what on earth is this guy doing? Is he nuts? Why wouldn't everyone want to win this? And in that moment when he kind of starts talking about why he didn't do it, and I listened to interviews later on, but I just thought, that is incredible. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to win everything to win. Sometimes losing is what you require to go forward. And I fell in love with strategy from that point. Like, he had ultimately proven amazing strategy, but in that moment, it all came to its head. And it wildly all comes back around for me, because then my challenge is the same challenge. It's like 17, 18 years later. But building up that confidence really just went over time and time. I was so lucky to have my dad, who at any point in time never doubted me. When I told him I was going to get on Survivor and win at 8, he literally turned to me and said, I know you will. And that never left. Like, years and years later.
That's amazing.
I built it by participating, by not letting other people get in my head. Even in high school, I was not the best at really anything. I was quite sporty, but still not the best at sports. I never represented my state or Australia or anything. But I was constantly working forward. How can I be better? And always, it's kind of this is more recently that I've figured out what it is, but I call it the +1 strategy. And when you're at your absolute brink, and this relies on you being honest to yourself, you're at the absolute brink and you're on the ground, like in tears, whether it's at the gym or going for another job, and you just go, I'm going to do one more. I have completely broken, but I'm going to do one more. Every time you do that, you add extra little building blocks, which accumulate over time. And I think that's what ultimately did it.
I have heard of that before. And yes, and it's one of those things where if you can build that extra muscle a bit more this time, then it becomes easier the next time. And then it also works for other things like opportunity where, if people work in sales, I know you've worked in comms and marketing, and it's like, should I send out that last pitch? Or, should I cold email one more person? Or should I pitch this one extra idea? You never know if that last one is going to be the one that sticks, and that's going to be the one that opens up the doors for you. So yes, keep going. One more. I love that. I want to ask, I know you talk a lot about resilience, and you have Resilience Tribe so beautifully displayed on your social media. Is there a moment that you remember from your pre-survivor life where you thought, holy shit, I'm resilient?
Yeah, I did. So, well, there were times where I definitely didn't. I'm quite an emotional person, as we see from my season. I I cry a lot, but I'm also really happy a lot. And I get angry and all sorts of different emotions. And I'm not afraid to express them. But when I was a kid, my parents were getting divorced, and it was a really messy divorce, like awful through the court system. It actually changed the laws in Australia to enable kids to have half-half with their parents. Because before my dad went through the system, it was just mediation. It happened a lot in mediation, but it didn't happen in the court system. So it always went to the mother. At the time, I didn't really understand that, but it was all happening and going on. And this is when Survivor was happening too. That's why we started watching, because Dad was like, you need to see people who have resilience, who stand by their morals, who go out and get their dreams and what they want. And so as a little kid, I realized not everyone else is going through this, and that I was still showing up. I was still showing up for sport, even when I was in tears. Like, I'd still stand up on stage and dance because I was a dancer. And despite all the things that were going on, I enabled them to be there and accept them, and then just continued forward with it. But in saying that, I still collapse. Like, people are so kind and are like, oh, you're so resilient, and like, look at what you did on Survivor and all of that. But I have my days where I completely melt down and think, how on earth can I pretend that I'm this resilient person for everyone else when I'm not doing well at all? And I think that's what the beauty of it is the fact that I actually share that and I tell that, and a lot of people don't. So if you ask me how I am and I'm not doing well, I'll tell you I'm not doing well.
That is such a breath of fresh air, because I think it's so easy to want to only share the positive. I feel like there's definitely times where I feel like I fall apart too. And I'm like, no, let me just let people think that I have it going on and that I'm doing well. So I really admire that you're always honest about where you're at. And when you're telling the story about you dealing with your parents' divorce, and that's how you first got into Survivor, I felt my eyes watering, because that's, again, very similar to my story. I lived with my grandparents growing up. So I lived in a multi-generational home where I had my siblings, parents, and grandparents. And my grandpa, who I was really close with, passed away right before the first season of Survivor premiered. And I had never experienced death. I'd never experienced loss. And I was just like, you're a kid. You don't know how to process your emotions. So I just started watching the show to escape. And then I was also like, wow, these people are so resilient. They're overcoming this. They're living outside. They have nothing. I'm going to do that one day. And I think that the beautiful, poetry or art of somehow you ending up doing that same challenge, except the harder version for your final immunity challenge. And Oh my gosh, I remember watching it and seeing you're shaking, the waves are crashing on you. It's insane. I can't believe this is really a thing that you went through. And then you win it, and then you go on and you deliver what is still considered one of the best final tribal council pitches of all time and all of the survivors. When you were out there, did you think that this was going to be an episode or a moment that resonated with people and that remains an iconic one in survivor history?
So just before I touched on that, I started smiling and like almost laughing. Sorry, when you were talking about your grandfather, not because it was obviously devastating. I think we are actually like kindred spirits because at the same time, my grandfather passed away as well.
No.
Legitimately same timeline, right before the show.
Oh my God.
Like, so that just freaked me out because I was like, oh, I probably won't say that. And then it was like, whoa, we're mimicking each other from the other side of the world.
Yeah,
without knowing.
If you're watching the YouTube version of this, you can see that I was like actually gonna cry. Wow, thank you for telling me that.
This is mental. This is actually mental. But yeah, so with that challenge, thank you. It was bizarre. Like when I had this moment halfway through the game where I was like, what will the last challenge be? Because I knew my strength was endurance and that ultimately I might have to win one challenge to prove myself as worthy of winning. And I had this moment where I was like, it would be iconic for the first season to do the same challenge as what's the first season of the US. Like, that would just make sense. And so for some reason, I had my delusional confidence that that was going to be the last challenge. And when I came around the corner on the hill, I saw it and I just went, holy shit. And it was as if my whole life had actually mushed together and I was supposed to be there in that moment. It was so overwhelming because it was just like, how on earth could I just know this from when I was a kid till now? Like, I sound like a nutter, but that's how it felt. Mm-hmm. And then when my dad came out, it was just, again, like, this is everything. Like, my dad's there just like when I said I was going to get on. It's the same challenge. This is mine for the taking. And at the time, I had no idea that it was going to have such a big impact, my journey overall, and then particularly at the end, because I wasn't particularly liked on my season. Like, mm-hmm. I don't think it was because of who I am. I think just the social dynamic of the game and the strategy and how the tribes laid out and that it was so dominant towards the others and we were in the minority. I think that's ultimately what it was. So to then have such a big moment and then another big moment, I didn't really get it. I didn't really get how well I had done at the final tribal either. I thought I did a great job. I thought I'd won it. Like, I was like a little bit confident then because I was just like, how can you dispute what I've said? But I just remember being like, I feel like I did a really good job. I haven't seen many good final tribal council pitches. A lot of people fall over at the end, which is fair. It's tough. You're tired, you're sick of it, and you just want it to be over. It's so close to the end, and all of production are kind of mentally out of it as well. So all your surroundings are saying, oh, it doesn't matter, but it's the most important time to step up. So to have that overwhelming response of, that's the best final tribal, that's the best final challenge, like everyone in absolute tears, is little 8-year-old Kristie is so proud. Like, so proud.
You should be. And I think it's the marriage of so many things. One, part of the reason why I think it was so powerful watching it is because it felt like the fates aligned. You could feel that it was such a powerful moment, both in the final tribal and in the final immunity challenge. So, and you could tell there was real heart and a real person. And also, I feel like this is where your marketing and your communications background comes into play too, because there is a lot of logic that comes with making a pitch like that. And like you said, you have to make sure that what you're saying, nobody can really, no one can really argue it. No one can poke holes into it. Everything you said is logical. And that element is so important when it comes to that final stretch of the game.
At the end of the day, I was like, as long as I have the votes, it doesn't matter. Like, personally, I just wanted to win.
Yes, I remember that's what I was thinking as I was going through the show. I was like, I don't care if I'm the star of the show. I just want to win. And the thing is, I think sometimes playing like that, it leaves you vulnerable to a lot of people's opinions. I think that Survivor tends to reward certain types of gameplay and has a harder time communicating different types of people and different types of gameplay. And when I came off the show, you and I actually had a long conversation. And I remember after we talked, it was like I could exhale and I thought, wow, finally I'm talking to somebody who understood exactly what I went through with how it's the highest of highs, but also can feel so awful at times. What was it like for you the first year after your season aired?
Oh, it was pretty crazy. Like all of a sudden overnight, people knew who I was and knew a lot about me, or felt as if they actually knew me. And I like
Mm-hmm.
would walk down the street and people would grab me, like physically grab my arm. And I was
Oh,
like,
I hate
whoa, like, it's a bit much. And then I'd realize like they really don't know what they're doing. Like they think they know you
that.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of instinctually reacting. And thank God I'm a huge fan myself, because I'm like, you know what? If I saw a Survivor player in Australia or the US, I would lose my shit. I'd be like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what to do. I probably wouldn't even talk to them because I'd be so nervous. Only because I'm in the family do I feel comfortable approaching people in reality TV or famous people now. But it was definitely a massive high. It was like everything I'd ever dreamed of has just happened. But at the same time, everything I'd ever dreamed of had just happened. And it was like, what now? What on earth
Mm-hmm.
do I do now? And the down was huge. It was like at least a year of me being like, what on earth am I going to do with my life? Because I always knew that I was going to work in advertising and that's what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to be on Survivor, and that I wanted to live overseas. All these things were so like definite in my life. And then to have something that was like not definite was pretty crazy.
I feel like I can relate. And so many people I've talked to who have been on shows like this, who have won, who have experienced the high, all of a sudden, once you get it, it's hard for you to figure out what comes next once the dream is achieved. So then when you kind of experience this low and you wonder, where do I go from here? How do I make sure I'm not squandering this opportunity and people knowing who I am? How do you deal with that?
There was a lot of worry about squandering an opportunity. And then for me, I remembered I was like, I went on Survivor because I wanted to play. Like, I would have done it whether it was filmed or not. Like, I didn't care that it was on
Mm-hmm.
TV. That was just the method of me being able to have that opportunity. So I ultimately went about what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy a camper van and travel around Australia. And so eventually that's what I did. And I started doing that and just going, you know what, Kristie, it's okay not to know. Get out there and do things, because that's how stuff happens. That's how you meet people. That's how opportunities come about. And it expands from that. Like most recently, the best example of it was oh, let me rewind a little bit. I didn't have the most positive relationship with Survivor after the show, because I felt a little bit
Mm-hmm.
like jaded. And I felt, you know, what we were talking about before with my game never would have been recognized unless I'd made it to the end, because it was all about
Mm-hmm.
winning. And so I didn't necessarily play the game that I wanted to play. I played the game that I had to play to win. And if I
Mm-hmm.
didn't win, I would have had nothing and nobody would have cared. It would have been all whatever, which is fine. But then I had this negative relationship with Survivor for a really long time. I still watched it, but in my heart, the love had died. And then last year, I was looking for a way to help my mentees applying for a reality TV show. How did they get the experience of being on the show so they can articulate what they'll actually be like? Because so many people are like, oh, I don't know what I'd be like. I'm like, you do know. But
Yeah.
this was the push I was looking for. So long story, I went and found all these little fan-made shows. There's heaps in the US, one that Bob Crowley does in Maine, but I found this one called Sydney Survivor. Ultimately, I said, no, I'm not going to play. I'm just here for my mentors. And then a week out, they were like, we don't have enough players. Will you play? So I stepped up and stepped in and played, and I had a blast, like the best time ever. And after that, by participating, putting myself out there, getting amongst the world, just doing things, whether or not I really knew what was going to come of it or not, that's what helped me get back. I, all of a sudden, after that, fell back in love with Survivor and was like, that has made all the difference.
Good for you for doing that. I think that I am probably still so soon out of the show, because when you're telling that story, for me, the thought of, going and playing the game again with a bunch of newbies, if I don't do well, does this validate what all of the haters said about, how I didn't deserve it or how I just got lucky? I feel like those are the feelings of anxiety that come over me. And wow, you're very brave for throwing yourself in there and doing that. And it probably was healing, and it probably set you free from a lot of the things that kept you jaded and that hurt you from the show, right?
For sure. There was a lot of, because it was a lot more hands off, right? It was just the raw form of the game. You didn't get pulled aside for interviews. You weren't pulled away. You didn't feel like slightly manipulated by the questions that you were being asked in the game. So it was much more the raw format, which is what I love about the show. Right after the show, I was going to do the one in the US. And then I paid for it, everything, and I was going to go. And then I just had a meltdown and was like, I can't do this because of all the reasons that you just said. Like, I'm not going to be good enough. What happens if I'm first boot? It's going to justify everything that everyone else said. Maybe I'm not that good at playing the game. And also, like, having a huge target on your back. Why would I invest so much time to just be the first person out? But this one was like super low stakes, really, which is also the other thing to do. Participate in low stake things. Like, try it. Like, at the end of the day, I was like, like maybe 500 people, maybe 1,000 people watch it. Like, it's not going to be 1 million.
Where do you stand with Survivor now?
Now I'm back in love with it. I do love it. I love it for what it is, what the game is. When I watch it, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this is just annoying. Like I can see all the production side of it now. I can't watch it in the same way that I watched it as a fan. And it took me a long while to accept that it's not going to be a show that's just leisurely fun for me anymore, because you can see so much of the background, which is what I imagine it's like for a magician, right? Like, someone becomes a magician and the same fascination and like shock of, how is it done, is completely gone. And although I know that Survivor is real, we know that it's very, very real.
Yes.
It's hard to see past the fact that you're like, I know there's more going on there than what they've made it look like, because they've got to put it into 45 minutes or an hour.
On social media, I see you often mentioning resilience and this phrase, be yourself, back yourself. So what does that mean to you?
So be yourself, back yourself is actually a saying that my dad used to say to me. And right before I went on Survivor, he gave me this tiny little card and he was like, don't open it until the day before. And I opened it, and the only thing that was written on it was be yourself, back yourself. And I was like, okay, like at the end of the day, if all shit's hitting the fan, that's what we're going to do, because what you do in your life is obviously working for you in some way or another. So if you get out on the show and start doing something different, like all your success in life and that got you on the show is not going to pay off. Like I tell people all the time, I didn't win Survivor by being on Survivor. And so being myself is authentically saying what I mean and what I think, and not hiding that from fear of repercussion of not being liked or hurting somebody's feelings. Like obviously not being a bitch or a nasty dickhead or something, but not like hiding the fact that you don't agree with somebody. It's okay to disagree. but you don't need to go out into a full-on brawl. So you got to be yourself, allowing that authentic side to come through. And backing yourself is just believing that you can do it. You can't rely on other people all the time to believe what you're capable of doing, because only you really know. If I had listened to all the people that said I couldn't get on the show, that I couldn't win that last immunity challenge, that I couldn't finish a double degree, I would have got nowhere in my life. And I can't tell you how many Survivor players and how many production people told me that I would never win the last challenge because I lost 38 challenges in a row. But they didn't know what I knew, which was I was watching where I was coming in all the challenges, and I was coming fourth place in pretty much all of them. And I was like, well, I've beaten Lee before, I've beaten Elle before in challenges. And if I hadn't have backed myself, then there was no way we would have seen what happened.
See, this is that delusion again, people, the healthy level of delusion where you have to just believe that you are capable and you can get what you want. I've also seen that since Survivor, you have been a big advocate in terms of mental health. So what was your relationship with your mental health or understanding of your mental health before the show? And then why is it important for you to talk about mental health now?
Oh, it was like invisible. I didn't even know what mental health was. I didn't even know what anxiety was at all in the slightest. I got out there and I had a huge panic attack for like 3 days. It was awful. I don't even know how people like functioned with me, which is probably why they didn't. But it also amounts to this moment where you see me crying in the bush. And then Elle comes over to me and starts talking to me about it. And she's like, you have anxiety. And I was like, what? And she went through all of the feelings that I was having. And I was like, but I've always felt like that my entire life. Like now it just feels really heightened. And so I had this moment where I was like, I have been anxious my entire life and had no idea because it was never spoken about. It was never explained. People didn't acknowledge it. And so I thought I was crazy, like a legit loony who nobody else had ever gone through this before. And then to come out on the other side, having people say, I have that feeling, I've had that experience, really cemented what was so important. Because I was also thinking, what was the point of going out there? What was the best thing? And the best thing was having people message me going, you know what, you changed my life because I didn't realize that, or I felt different and weird. And knowing that I'd actually really made an impact was more valuable than anything else, because Survivor had had such a huge impact on my life. Survivor got me through like so many things, and now I'm able to give that to other people. So I think talking about it will help somebody else out there who might experience it but have no idea. Like now we talk about it a lot more and it's very prevalent in society, but I remember at the time being like, I don't think anyone in Australian TV has ever said that they have mental health struggles.
Wow.
And like, so I could be wrong, but I felt like that moment really took it to another level for the Survivor community, at least the Survivor reality TV community. These days I'm like, yeah, it seems a bit more normal, but at the time it was like really heavy to say something like that.
Yes, you had this vulnerable moment and you learned that you had anxiety on TV. But then afterwards, I feel like I never saw you have any shame about it. It seemed like you had so much self-acceptance about who you were. And I think that that's part of what makes it so inspirational to people. And that is going to help, the future 8-year-old girls who are going to be watching you doing the immunity challenge. And that's what they're going to think about during their moments where they need resilience or they need, that extra push.
Oh, stop it. It's like I get emails from parents of like them telling me about their like 8-year-old kids and like their 11-year-old kids. And it's wild because I can't wait till I'm like 40 and somebody steps up on some show somewhere and is like that moment of Erika or Kristie changed my life.
For the record, you never saw it on TV, but I talked about it on my winning season. So if you need that example, I can be example number one of how you on TV made an impact on somebody.
Oh my gosh.
I know you love making an impact on people, and it's been a few years since you've been on Survivor. So what do you want to be doing now? I know that you have a job and all of that stuff that adults do. What is it that you want to be doing now, knowing that this is what you're passionate about?
I still don't know exactly what I want to do, but like I said, I'm just out there doing different things. So I actually got approached the other day to do a speaking event about resilience to a group of Year 11 students who are I don't want to say high achievers, but people who want to get out there and do things. And so they volunteer for this camp to participate on a weekend, and they've invited me to go speak at it. So doing things like that where I can continue to make an impact are really important. I am also helping people live their dreams of getting on reality TV, or at least just getting a call back. And indirectly, by helping them do that, they learn so much more about themselves, what they're capable of. And most of the time they're like, Kristie, it's okay. I got the call back and I got the Zoom, and I'm all right that I didn't get through, because you know what? I've gone out and done this experience. I've learned this and all the other things that they get from the casting mentoring. Of course, my ultimate goal is to get people on, because I know what it's like to not break through that wall and achieve your dream. But helping people apply what I've learned, what I've been lucky enough for my dad to teach me, what I've learned through Survivor, and not having to have them go through it. Like, you don't need to spend 55 days in the dirt like me. Like, I don't want anyone to have to do that just to learn these lessons.
Yeah, you went the most extreme way to realize that dreams can come true. There's probably like a cleaner way where you starve less.
And I tell you what I love. I love seeing you, like what you've gone on to do since being on the show. Like, I see you as like a really inspirational way of leveraging what your skills are and applying it and seizing that opportunity at the door. Like you being on ET Canada. I know it's talking about the show, which would be really hard, but that's amazing. Like, your background in PR and presenting and always wanting to do a podcast and having all those skills surmount to something, and you going, you know what, I'm scared. This might not be, it's hard to face the show again, but you seizing it and going for it. Like, it gives me chills and it inspires me, because I'm like, shit, maybe I really could do something.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me coming from you. At the same time, I know earlier you were saying that you still have your days where you are up and down. And honestly, I have so many days where I'm like, what am I doing? Am I squandering the opportunity? Am I not doing enough? Do I need to do more? So thank you for saying that, because it makes me feel so much better, because I do freak out too. So don't worry, I don't have it all together.
And there is this weird like expectation of people who go on reality TV to do something. And it's like, it's okay if you don't. Like, you don't have to be an influencer, like, and selling things. You don't have to do that. Yes, there's points of leverage to it. But at the end of the day, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. It's all good.
Especially now with so many people going on reality TV shows to try to change their life, it seems like there's a lot of pressure. I've definitely felt pressure. And I don't know. I mean, you and I have talked before about how we didn't do the usual things after we came off of our respective seasons. We didn't do the usual interviews, didn't do the usual things. And some people don't get it and some people don't like it, but you actually don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
Yeah. And I talked to like a handful of different players and from all sorts of shows about it. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, at the end of the day, you don't need to. Like, I remember so many people would call me up being like, can you come on this TV show and do this? And I'm like, I've got a job. Like, I'm working in the middle of the day. And like, they'd ask you to do stuff for free all the time. And it's hard just becoming this commodity in which you're like, these people don't actually really care. Don't go on reality TV if you think that it's going to change your life, as in give you a whole new career. It's not. The people who get careers out of reality TV are going out there hustling, making it happen. They're not sitting there being like, oh, all these brands are going to come to me. That's not what happens. They all come flashing to you for maybe a month and then they all bugger off. Like the ones that are really going for it are hustlers.
Yes, 100%. I think it's possible. I mean, we're still working on it. It's possible, but it's not gonna be easy, people. So I did see though that there was something fun that you're working on that I want to ask you about. Your memoir is in progress. Tell me how that's going.
Oh gosh, it's actually going really bad at the moment.
Okay. Thank you for being honest. This is why we talked to Kristie Bennett.
Yes, I will always tell you what's actually happening. So I went really hard on it for a while, and I still am working on it. It's still in the progress. But there are times where it's harder to write than it is others because you have to go back to really traumatic, intense periods of time. And sometimes I just go, you know what, my life doesn't have the capacity to recover from that right now because I understand the recovery of time of going back in and out of different things related to difficult periods in my life. But ultimately, I think it's always building because I'm always writing like a little paragraph down here or there. But it has been amazing. I have written over 70,000 words, which is like a lot.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Like Way is an Australian Survivor player, Brain versus Brawn. She's an author. And I've spoken to her so many times about it. And she's just like, what do you mean you've written 70,000 words? People take like a whole year to get anywhere near that. And I'd smashed it out in like a couple of months because once it starts flowing, it happens. But it's something that I really want to do and I still want to get there. It's not your traditional kind of book. I'm telling it how it is. I'm going into all the details of what people probably wouldn't expect and what TV show producers might not love others to acknowledge. Obviously, we need to go past legal for some of these things, but it's never too late. Like at the end of the day, I'm writing it for me and the fans who are interested and want to hear about it and to preserve for my family. And again, it's my opportunity to share the story from my perspective without the edit.
Yes. I'm so on board. I cannot wait to get a copy. And I think it's going to unfold and get written in exactly the perfect timeline for it because who knows what's just around the corner for you? Who knows what next chapter in life you're going to have? And I feel like you're going to encounter something where you realize that's why I couldn't finish the memoir yet because I needed that experience to happen to tell that story. But when it's out, Kristie, I will be reading it.
Oh, I'll be sending you a copy right away. I want your feedback for sure.
Okay, I am in. So before we wrap up, is there anything you want to tell people that you're working on? Anything you want to promote? Any fun stuff?
Probably basically if you are interested in reality TV mentoring, this is particularly for the Australians. Obviously, I can help in the US and Canada, but Australia is my strong point. Contact me. All the details are on my Instagram. Likewise, if you're interested in the book, you can DM me your email address and I'm adding everyone to a list. So when it finally gets done, you'll be the first to hear about it as well.
Amazing. I will check that out. And yes, your casting advice, just through talking to you offline, Kristie knows what's up. So make sure you reach out for any casting advice. Kristie, you are forever an inspiration to me, and I'm so happy that now I get to call you a friend. And thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Erika. You are absolutely incredible. How amazing it is that I'm able to make a friend on the other side of the world who I know that I can pick up and call at any point in time and just know that they get it. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
And if you ever come to Canada, you can come stay with me. It might be an air mattress right behind me, but you are always welcome to stay with me in Canada.
Oh, likewise. This is my spare room. You're always welcome to stay. You are here. You're like, I'm Kristie. I'm in North Sydney. I'll be like, okay, pop round.
I love talking to Kristie Bennett, and I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Whenever I talk to her, I feel like I'm talking to an old friend, and it is wild that there's somebody who is on the other side of the world, and we can have so much in common and have so many shared experiences. So let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments or on social media. And I love her advice about doing just one more, because you never know where just one more can lead to more strength or another opportunity. And that takes me to another fun segment I'm going to add at the end of every episode. On episode 25 of my podcast, it was my special birthday episode where I asked the listeners to submit questions for me. And my sister Crystal joined me on the show, and she was able to interview me with your questions. And I had so much fun answering everybody's questions, and I got so much nice feedback from that episode that now I will answer an audience question at the end of every episode. So moving forward, please feel free to DM me or send a comment with a question you have for me, and maybe I can answer it in a future episode. Right now, I'm going to answer the questions that are left over from the birthday episode that I couldn't get to then, but please start sending in your questions, and I would love to, answer them and tell you a bit more about me or help you out any way I can. So the question that I didn't get to on my birthday episode that I would love to answer for you today is, what was your favorite country to travel to? And a country that will always be so near and dear to my heart is Turkey. I went on my 30th birthday, and it's actually fitting that I'm talking about this on the Kristie Bennett episode, because I just love seeing things when I'm a kid and deciding, yes, I'm going to do that one day, and then doing them. Because I had this VHS tape of the Spice Girls live at Istanbul, or rather, the Spice Girls live in Istanbul. I had no idea where Istanbul even was, but I just loved this concert video so much that I decided one day I'm going to Istanbul. So for my 30th birthday, I got together with some friends, and we actually did make the trek to Turkey, and I thought it was just one of the most incredible places I'd ever visited. And Istanbul in particular was a place that meant a lot to me because I had really wanted a Turkish rug, and I wanted a Turkish rug from a specific store where I had seen Hillary Clinton buy a Turkish rug before. So I went on this adventure to find the Hillary Clinton Turkish rug store. And also there's a bunch of celebrities who have bought Turkish rugs at the store. For some reason, Hillary Clinton is the one who's burned into my mind. And then I show up, and it turns out that Turkish rugs are really expensive. Like, rugs are way more expensive than I thought they would be, but Turkish rugs is in the heart of Istanbul in a popular store like this are expensive. But in my research, I saw that you have to haggle. And at this point in my life, I was not the most confident at haggling. There's something about asking someone to lower the price that, it feels uncomfortable. It's just not a skill that I ever naturally learned or picked up in my life. But in that store on my 30th birthday, I managed to haggle down the price, and I saved a couple $100 on this Turkish rug that I love. It is sitting here in my podcast room today. And to me, it's a symbol of, one, those crazy childhood dreams you have, they do come true if you really go for them. And the second is knowing that I can push myself out of my comfort zone and advocate for myself, and it can pay off. So, loved visiting Turkey. I want to go back because I only spent a week there, and there's still so much more to see. So thank you to the listener for submitting that question. If you have questions for me, feel free to DM me or write them in the comments, and I will try to answer them in a future episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Kristie Bennett and for tuning in to season 2 of Happy to See Me. As always, you can subscribe on YouTube at Happy to See Me. And of course, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I am so excited to be on this journey, and I'm so grateful to everybody who has stuck around, honestly, even for this episode, to my thank you. And I cannot wait to bring in more inspirational guests and have amazing conversations. So thank you for listening, and I will be happy to see you next week.